former Queensland Red superstars Aidan Toa and Dallin Murphy. Lads, how are we?
People, yeah, mate, good, really good.
Very, very excited to be here, obviously.
Bit nervous?
A little bit nervous. On our bench, the battlers, the gruesome twosome, Big Fat Darcy, Ryan Fellini.
Fellow Terrasian, mate.
What do I ask you? I don't really have a question, mate. I love you, mate.
Yo ma, and welcome to the PAC Show. That's right, proudly brought to you by PAC Athletic Club and DoubleTake Studios. The show that brings you all the news, the previews, the reviews, the interviews, the highlights and lowlights from rugby in Australia and around the world. My name is Jay Board. Joining me as per usual, we've got Dos and we've also got Dallin, but we've got a new gruesome twosome this evening. Big Fat Das and Ryan Freeney aren't able to be here, so we've got Quirky all the way from Japan and the publican, the man himself from the Port Office Hotel, Gorko, Nick Gregorski. Lads, how are we doing?
Really good, yep. Big Fat Gorks here. A few kilos on over the last year. Let's call it stress eating, but it's great to be here, guys.
Yeah, I was going to say I'd have to be the fittest on the couch so far, if we're going to be honest. So, no, but thanks Dos and Dell for forking out for those flights all the way back from Japan. Yeah. Jetstar economy, thank you.
You've never flown economy in your life.
Yeah, I don't know. Always turn left.
Only the finest at the PAC Show. But, mate, no, it's good to have you guys here. Obviously, we don't have the regular blokes here, but Quirky, how long you been back home for, brother? You've only been home for about a week or so now. Is it feeling good to be back?
Mate, it is. Obviously, caught up with you guys while I was over in Japan, and you guys are keeping tabs on me, which is good. But been home for 5 days, and kids have been sick all 5 days, and gastro's flying around. So, mate, absolutely loving it.
Well, mate, it's a pleasure having you there, man.
Yeah,
Sweet.
if I can spread it, that'll be great.
Yeah, great. Thanks for shaking my hand as soon as you walked in. And Gorko, mate, I've heard that this weekend you've got a couple of special guests coming out to the Port Office, mate.
Yeah, we're turning into a bit of a league pub just for one weekend only. We've got Fletcher and Hindy taking over the pub on Saturday, and they're proper funny fuckers, so we'll they're pretty loose too. I'm speaking to the producers, the Matty John show, and this looks quite professional compared to that.
You reckon? I reckon that's the first and last time that's ever going to be said, but we'll take it. So without further ado, tonight we've actually got a massive show. I think we were going to have Grace Hamilton coming from Wallaroos Camp, but unfortunately she's had something pop up, so we'll have her next week. But we've still got Brad Wilkin from the Rebels. He's going to be joining us for a chat just after PAC News. As we said, we've got plenty of stuff we want to get into because there was some crazy shit over the weekend from the Champions Cup and from the Shoot Shield as well. There was huge upsets and boilovers there, and there was a couple of big wins in QPR and Super Rugby as well. So we're going to get right into that. But first and foremost, check this out, guys. We're going to do PAC News. There's meant to be noise, man. Shit house. Let's try that again, shall we? Now it's time for PAC News.
That's pretty cool.
Well done, Zachy.
Thank you very much.
Unreal on the soundboard.
Yeah.
Great.
It's still professional now, Gorko?
Yep.
Yeah, thanks for noticing. First thing we wanted to discuss was Tate McDermott's comments after the game on Saturday night, essentially saying that the whole 10 situation with Lawson Crichton, saying that he's been thrown to the wolves. I want to get your opinion on this, Dow, because obviously you know Lawson pretty well. You were a 10 yourself. Do you think he's been thrown to the wolves? Do you think he's been sort of unfairly, I guess, chastised for the results over the last 3 weeks?
I don't know if he's been unfairly chastised. I haven't read too much of the media about him. I haven't believed.
There are forums where
You don't read forums.
Where else am I going to get my QAnon information? Thank you very much, mate. No, but
because anyone can have an opinion, but I feel like he's been a bit underdone, of course. Like he hasn't played a lot of 10 leading up until this point, and he's been thrown in, but you take that opportunity as best as possible. Do you know what I mean? And he's doing a good job. I think that the opinion and the point that Tate was making was that the players around him are potentially letting him down.
I mean, he also doesn't have Hunter Paisami outside him.
Correct.
Who takes a hell of a lot of
pressure. Which is possibly a change I make this week if I'm coaching the team. And I mean, Dale's exactly right. Lawson's been thrown into the deep end. He's really capable of stepping up and making that step up to Super Rugby. But and Tate has been great. But outside Laws, I think Jock was good on the weekend. But Hamish, Flukies, working his way into his career, they were just a bit quiet, not quite. And Tate was right, not really providing that support that a rookie 10 needs.
Guys, sorry, Joe, but
you're right, Gork.
If Hamish Stewart was the number 10 at the start of the season, who was this guy going to be number 2?
Lawson, I think, has always been rated as, well, to be honest, I think Tom Liner is there. They've got their eye on him as their long-term option. That said, obviously, there's going to be competition with Lawson, who's sort of been there the last couple of years. Dal, do you reckon that's probably what they're looking at long-term, you'd say? But because how long does Rabbit have left? Rabbit, by the way. How long does James O'Connor have left? Probably another couple of years, you'd say?
Yeah, well, he's signed for one more, but who knows where he's going to end up on the back of that. Is he contracted by Rugby Australia at the end of next year? Potentially, maybe not. So, yeah, they've got obviously Tom Liner. They've got a few other young kids coming through, but at the moment they need someone who can play Super Rugby, and Lawson is that guy.
Yep.
Hamish Stewart, in my opinion, is a 12 and does a very good job at 12. So, Lawson's got a job to do, and the rest of the team's got a job to do. And so they've had 3 weeks in a row now where they should have won all 3 games, in my opinion. And so now the opportunity for them is to bounce back and come away with this weekend. There's no tougher game than this weekend, right? The Blues at Eden Park.
I think that, Dal, we played when you were thrown in the deep end, if you know what I mean. Like when we had that string of 10 problems with Quady and all that dropping off, and mate, you jumped in and got the job done, and we had
we got beaten by 80.
Yeah, but hey mate, I played
job done.
I played 5
Didn't
years.
say done well.
Didn't do,
but he
didn't exercise that done well. But, yeah. So no, I played with the Sunwolves, so I know. But as Dos said, with him stepping in at 10, sometimes you do need that older guy at 12 or 13 to be taking the load and directing and being that voice and being that hard, direct voice, that early ball pass, and that 12, Hamish Stewart, stepping into the 10 role across that field, sort of giving him a bit of confidence and, early chat and stuff like that. For me, what I've seen, there's a lot of young guys and a lot of young quiet guys, potentially.
Yeah. Quirky's 100% right. I remember in 2012, J-Ball, Quade was out, Benny Lucas was out, Mike Harris was out, and we had your mate Sam Lane coming.
Laney did his knee.
No, but before he did his knee, he debuted against the Brumbies.
He killed it, didn't he?
And we won.
Yeah.
We won. I mean, admittedly, he did have me outside him.
Goes to show how good he really was.
But that's exactly what we were talking about then. And then, he luckily had Willie Genya at 9 and Ben Tapwhite at 12 outside him, 2 highly experienced players. Who took a lot of the responsibility in terms of where we played and how we played, and it's exactly what Lawson's crying out for right now.
But if we watch the Brumbies on the weekend, they took Nick White off. They had that young bloke come in at 9, and he killed it.
Yeah.
It's because Dan McKellar throughout the season's been throwing these young guys in.
Yes.
Lots of minutes.
Yeah.
Lots of practice, and it's against the Force and it's against the Rebels, and it just shows now they're killing it.
I think it's just a bit of a warning sign if we all remember what sort of happened with Mac Mason. Didn't get as many minutes, then had a bit of a shocker on debut and now got sort of shut out the back. So, but Lawson, I think, is our long-term 10 option alongside Tom Liner. So at least there's competition there. Talking in regards to 10s and what you were just discussing there, Gorko, Noah Lolasia's signed on until 2024 now. Speaking of long-term 10 options in Australia, he's got to be right up there.
He was fantastic. I mean, those centres they've got there at the moment are just unbelievable.
Yeah.
I love the big back row. It gives them pretty clean ball. And Nick White's at his scheming best. Not always a big Nick White fan, but really like what he's doing. Mind you, Tate was awesome on Friday night. If we didn't have him, we lose by 60.
100%, man. 100%. It's good to see that there are, like, a lot of these guys we're discussing are sort of mid-20s or younger. You got to remember that. Like, they feel like they've been a part of the furniture for so long, but so many of them are so young. So it's good to know that we've got so much competition coming through. Another thing I wanted to discuss, just listening to the PAC podcast from last week, was a question was asked in regards to, does private equity need to come into the game in Australia? Primarily, it's just coming to the fore because I think that there needs to be something to help reinvigorate the game, primarily around maybe the marketing. And that's... There was an article in the raw about, there's probably 4 things you can invest in. There's grassroots, professional game, the admin side of things, and then obviously the marketing and promotion. So, Dos, I don't know. We touched on it a few weeks ago. Do you think private equity needs to be something that is genuinely looked at?
Yeah, I think at the moment, Rugby Australia has to look at all options, how to reinvigorate the game, how to get more money into it. We know that behind the AFL and the NRL, we languish right down here in terms of, a budget and the finances that they have access to. I'm not very privy to what goes on behind the scenes, so I don't really have too much of I don't have too much to comment on. But I think something like we've seen the All Blacks go down that track, and with the money invested into their programs, obviously the All Blacks, they're at a different level to where the Wallabies are at in terms of their marketability.
But South Africa do it, New Zealand do it, all the Six Nations competitions, union what am I trying to say? All the
Six Nations
countries all do it, and they had a much bigger cash base even to begin with. So that and we're the ones languishing, and it is showing me time. Sorry, man, I am.
Counter argument, boys. Did anyone watch the Force game on the weekend?
I did, yes.
Okay, one of the great knobs in Australian rugby, Twiggy. At half-time, go back and watch that on Stan Sport. That is the worst half-time speech I've ever seen.
What did he say?
Get him out of there.
What's happening here? What happened?
He just denied. I don't own it. The fans do. You really should, and he just go and look at it.
Bullshit. No, you own it. There's no two ways about it.
It's a PR exercise for him, and if you got a lot of money, great. The Western Force is still surviving. Yeah. I'm a bit of tongue-in-cheek, but, we just hope we get the right people who are the right investors.
Well, look, at the end of the day, we saw in 97 there was the whole Super League war in the NRL. Money talks, and shit can come to a head. I think Twiggy showed that there is something in it a few years ago when he took over the Force, tried to get that whack-ass global rapid rugby going, didn't really get it off the ground, but he showed that there's something we can do differently, and I think he's going to be a thorn in the side of Rugby Australia
I think Aussie Rugby can reach out, mate. Izzy Dag, for me, played with him at Cannon, and he used to tell me, mate, New Zealand Rugby reach out to all other sports, all avenues to see what they're doing, marketing, money, financially, all this, who's backing them. So I remember saying, mate, they would go to the Brooklyn Nets, the guys running New Zealand Rugby Union would sit, chair meetings, be with them. Then they'd shoot to England. They'd sit in the Liverpool meetings. What are you guys doing? Retention of players, retention of fans, all this stuff. What's your marketing policy? They're reaching out to the best teams in the world, in the biggest and best sports in the world. I feel like here we just try to go to war with the AFL and the NRL, where we could just be tapping into everyone, what's working, what's not. Reach out. That's why I think, New Zealand Rugby, you always see them marketing at the NBA and the NFL and over in all this kind of stuff. Same with England. I think we maybe need to broaden the horizons a bit.
100%. We've got to look outward instead of sort of looking inward in our competition here. 100%. One thing I wanted to ask as well is, speaking of that Force game, Gorko, did you see that pre-game ceremony? Obviously, there was the welcome to country, but the Indigenous sort of war dance or whatever it may be. I want to ask, I've always said, I remember a couple of years ago against the All Blacks, we had some Indigenous dancers come out and hype up the crowd and actually do a dance back to the haka. Do you reckon we should be bringing that back at least to every international game as well? It's a great opportunity to engage the Indigenous community.
My biggest thing about the haka is it's part of the New Zealand culture. Do you know what I mean? They went to war, they celebrated, they did lots of things under their traditional dance, and I don't know if we did it as an Indigenous people, did we? I don't know.
I wouldn't know, but I think it's one thing that New Zealand does is they actually, they actively discuss and educate, the colonial history of New Zealand, and then obviously their strong Indigenous culture. And I think it's, I don't know, I just think it's absolutely awesome. I think it's sick, and I think it'd be a great opportunity to be able to show something by way of bridging that gap between sort of where we are now with our involvement with the Indigenous community and progressing with it. So I don't know. I just thought it was cool as hell, if I'm being brutally honest. And one thing I wanted to see as well, I think I sent you an email with the photo of there was a player from West Harbour, Amanai Fasafalu, a mother of 13, ended up playing last weekend, got her boots back on after retiring with 4 of her daughters. I don't know. We've got it just there. You can see Amanai there in the middle there with 4 of her daughters. We saw last week the Island family all packed down 1 through 8 out of England, a father and his 7 sons. So a little heartwarming story there to see Amanai Fasavalu. We wanted to see, it would be great to have Grace Hamilton's opinion on that, but right there, that is absolutely awesome, Dos, to be able to see something like that, not just in club rugby, but in the women's game as well.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously a very proud moment for her. And it makes me sort of feel like a bit of a softie retiring because I've got 3 kids and I'm 30.
Yeah. She's got 13.
She's got 13 kids. So yeah, maybe I'm going to take a cold hard look at myself and have
a red hot look.
But
When did
mate,
she have time to play rugby?
I don't know.
I don't know, mate.
I don't know.
I don't know. But bless her, because that is an absolutely
Impressive
amazing feat.
effort.
Playing with 4 of your daughters, a mother of 13 coming out of retirement to play alongside them. That is absolutely awesome. Now, that rounds out PAC News. Now, let's get straight into our interview for this evening. As we said, we've got the East Tiger and the Melbourne Rebel superstar himself, Brad Wilkin, joining us on the blower. Brad, how you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
No, it's our pleasure, Brad, mate. I want to ask you, obviously, we saw the results earlier on over the weekend, a pretty heavy defeat at the hand of the Blues, but, I mean, how's the morale there after what was sort of a very, very tough week for you guys?
Yeah, obviously it's a pretty disappointing result. Going over to Auckland and playing over there, it's never easy. And then, they're a really good informed side, and we just didn't show up. So it's pretty disappointing. We've had a few days off since the game, and we're going tomorrow. So I'm sure it'll be a very spicy review.
Wilco, mate, Dos here. After a result like that, they're never the reviews that you want to come in on. I know everyone's a bit nervous to walk into training on a Monday. So, mate, we won't talk about the game. I want to talk a bit about you. Obviously, a pretty extensive injury history. You've missed a fair few games through knee recons, shoulder recons, and a few hamstring niggles. We caught up before you went down to Melbourne, and I just want to know. And mate, and to be fair, you've been playing outstanding this year. You know, you're a shining light at the Rebels on the weekend. Mate, your breakdown pressure's been tremendous. You're really throwing your body into contact. You've been durable. Has there been a change in anything that you've done in the preseason, or something that you're doing differently with your recovery to help you back up and put these consistent performances together?
Well, firstly, Dos, it was good to chat to you around all that stuff, because obviously yourself, you've had a few injuries, and even Quirky, you can see him there. I've reached out to him a few times. It's not unfamiliar territory, I guess, for a few guys. So, I guess pre-season we sort of just took it a little bit slower than normal. Sort of took a moderate, controlled approach to my training, and it was more just me being aware of my body a bit more now, and having those experiences, you learn how your body sort of is tracking, and just being a little bit smarter around some of my decisions around training, and seeking some sort of outside help with the mental side of the game. I think that plays a big role in injuries, especially. So I think just getting the mind right, and being in a good headspace around that goes a long way to sort of keeping you fit and healthy, I guess.
Yeah.
Wilco was asking me about being a redhead and actually how to stay alive and survive in a real world. Nothing to do with rugby, so it wasn't interesting.
Plenty of sunscreen was here.
Yeah, Melbourne is crazy. With weather. So, mate, that's all it was about. So it's good to see you still kicking, Wilco.
Brad, Dallin here, mate. Obviously, you're down in Melbourne. You've been a part of a few programs now. Tell us a little bit about the culture down there and how it's different to where you've been previously. And obviously, you started the year a bit slow, but you started to find your rhythm a little bit. Previous to the weekend, what's the culture like down there, and how's it been?
Yeah, like I said, we started the season pretty slow, and I felt like the last 5 games, well, apart from the Blues game, like we'd had 3 wins in the last 5, and we're just sort of starting to gain a bit of confidence in how we wanted to play. Obviously, new attack coach, new coach from last year, obviously with Dave leaving halfway through the year kind of thing, throws a lot of sort of curveballs around. So, yeah, just getting used to a new system, I think was probably the big challenge early rounds. And then in terms of culture, we've got a really good group of boys there that all get along and enjoy playing with each other. It's just a matter of being able to translate having good relationships off the field and putting those into performances on the field, which, yeah, that's the tough one at the moment.
Wilco, mate. Yeah, look, we're talking about the big loss and that, and I said before to the boys, I've been a part of a few big losses in my time over in Japan. You said you had a couple of days off. What did you guys get up to over that time? And you said you had a good bunch of boys, a good culture. Is it really player-driven in regards to this next day of training that's coming up in the review, or is it more coach-driven? With such a big loss, and like, how are you guys going to sort of amend what happened and cruise into the next week with this stride in your step?
Yeah. So yeah, we thought it was pretty important that we sort of do the review process quite thoroughly, and us players sort of took it on ourselves to do our own sort of review and send in clips of to our coaches. So the players definitely have sort of taken a bit more of a ownership on how we want to go about trying to learn from the weekend and start the week on the right foot. So I'm sure there'll be some things tomorrow, but yeah, everyone's sort of taking their own sort of accountability towards the performance on the weekend. So
a good lock-in sort of fixes things as well, if we're going to be honest.
I was going to say.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask, does that still happen, Wilco? In my era, which was a long time ago, if we had a shit loss like this, we'd probably just go out and bash ourselves for 2 days and just completely forget about it. But obviously that doesn't happen anymore. How hard has travelling and away games been to adjust again after COVID? Is it hard or just straight back into it?
Yeah, it's something different, and obviously, we had 2 6-day turnarounds and then one with travel. So, and there's a little bit going around in Melbourne at the moment in terms of sickness. So the boys weren't completely fully healthy. So yeah, I think a few days off this weekend has been good to sort of try and refresh and try and bring on the Chiefs this weekend.
Brad, I feel like you've been around forever. Obviously, you played a lot of footy, even though you've had a few injuries. What's the next couple of years look like for you? Do you have any big aspirations or goals, or is it just continuing doing what you're doing down there? What's the next couple of years look like?
Like I'm sort of enjoying my time down in Melbourne at the moment, and obviously playing consistently helps with that. It gets hard when you're on the sidelines, not really playing that much, but yeah, just really enjoying playing consistent rugby and just trying to compete and play my best kind of footy each week. And I feel like I'm starting to get like more and more confident the more footy I play. So hopefully building on that next year. I'm not exactly sure where I'll be, but loving my time in Melbourne, and I'm sort of in the process of sort of figuring out where I'll be next year. So we'll have to keep an eye on it.
Wilco, mate, I'm loving your little teased out mullet poking out the back there. How good is it? Is that you trying to get into the Burn Boys with Pone and Robbie Leota and stuff? It's looking sick, man. It needs to get a bit. When they get real sweaty and they jiggle their hair and it goes everywhere. You don't necessarily have that at the moment, but is this your little stepping stone to get in with the Burn Boys?
Oh yeah, you could say that. I reckon I was probably one of the originals with the mullet, and then they just took it to a whole new different level.
Didn't they? Oh,
I
mate,
chickened
yeah.
out and cut it. I've cut mine a few times, so yeah.
This is the first time I've seen Quirky with a short back and sides. He's had it his whole career.
Japan's changed him, Gorko.
man.
Japan's changed him.
Sorry, mate. I'm a salary man in Japan.
Yeah, because you're working on the line.
Yeah, no hair.
Safety
No
issues.
hair above the collar.
Wilco, mate, before you go, is there? You're obviously a very passionate Tiger man.
Yep.
Is there a chance that we'll see you after the Super Rugby season's done, assuming you don't get called up for higher honours?
Yeah, I think there'd be a good chance. I hope. I was wondering if Quirky will be throwing the boots
Oh,
on.
good question.
Well, they are short of 12, so Wilco, we could be on, mate. Mate, imagine two redheads running around back at East
12
again.
and 13.
Jeez, that gets me furry.
Well, maybe if Quirky throws the boots on, you might see me around Tigerland at the end of the year.
There we go. A bit of incentive. I
Yeah,
love
let's
it.
do it. Okay.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Wilco, thanks so much for joining us, brother. We wish you all the best for the rest of the season. You've been absolutely killing it on a personal level. The Rebels are starting to really kick some serious goals. So, mate, all the best with it, my brother.
No, I appreciate it, and thanks for having me.
Thanks,
Wonderful.
Thanks, Brad.
Wonderful, mate. Brad Wilkin, he's been absolutely immense this year. He started the season sort of coming off the bench, which was insane to me. And I think there was one game halfway through the season where I think he came on at half-time and literally turned the game around with 3 or 4 turnovers. His work at the breakdown this year, Doss, has been absolutely sublime.
He's been, as I said, sort of one of the standouts for the Rebels pack this year. Just consistently a mongrel at the breakdown, mate. He's tireless, his work in defence, and he carries really well. He's got good feet at the line. And he's a very measured guy, as I said, and obviously he's reached out to Quirky, and before he went back down to Melbourne, he had a couple of hamstring tears, so he sent me a message, see if we could catch up in Brizzy. And as you were saying, just to get a bit of perspective around, we were talking before around Rugby Australia, getting some global perspective in terms of what to do, and Wilco did that, and he spoke to a few different individuals, and probably, gave him some ideas that he hadn't originally thought of, and mate, it's good to see him. Good to see him doing really well.
He's forced himself into a very one thing that the Rebels, as you said, Dow, you touched on the fact they have started the season a little bit slowly, but they've started to work their way into it. One thing you couldn't deny is the quality of their back row with guys like Tamati Ioane, Michael Wells, Richard Hardwick, Wilco himself. For him to force his way back in, I wouldn't be surprised if a Wallabies jersey is within, say, 12 to 18 months he's been that good.
Yeah, I think if he can stay consistently on the field, certainly, right? He can play all across the back row.
Yep.
He's a genuine 7, but he can play 6'8", you know what I mean?
Especially with Rongas battling the injuries he's been having.
Correct.
Because he's got that ability to do the same.
And having a redhead in the team obviously is a massive for any side. So I feel like
We're
he's
all
got a
about
huge
inclusivity.
Same fan, for any,
I was counting it
for any
before.
family.
There's 9 people in the studio here and 5 of them are gingers. It's sort of confronting.
Let's see what happens next week.
All right, well, with that, let's rip into discussing the results from round 12 of Super Rugby. As we said, the Blues dished out an absolute hiding to the Rebels, 71-28. Moana Pacifica, as they are known, going down 26-20 to the Tars. The Force got smoked by the Satyrs, 53-15. And again, the Drua 67-5 going down to an absolutely ruthless Canes. But one game I really want us to look into, even just briefly because it does hurt, is the Highlanders 27, Reds 19. Look, we are down Hunter Paisami, James O'Connor, Taliela Tupou, 3 of our probably most deadly weapons. But, Doss, I don't know. Do you think the Reds are going to be anywhere near pleased with sort of how they've been performing over the last month?
Oh, no way, Jay.
Can't
no
be.
way. I mean,
They're actually sort of regressing in my
they
opinion.
are a bit. And I was speaking to Dal straight after the game. They obviously 3 very crucial figures to how the Reds play and the results that they get. But, mate, to be honest, they scored their points when the Highlanders were down to 13. And you'd think, you get that lead, you hold it. They've been so good at absorbing pressure this year and then, capitalising on little mistakes. But then when the Highlanders came back to
Folau Fakatava in particular.
Oh mate, he was unreal. He
Shit,
was unreal.
man.
And their impact guys, their bench or their finishers, as some coaches like to label them as, their finishers had a far bigger impact on the game.
Yep.
Fakatava was huge. The number 19 and 20 were unreal for them as well. And I just think throughout the whole game, the Highlanders they looked like the better team. They deserved the win. I thought the Reds would somehow, as they've been doing most of the year, manufacture a win out of a poor performance. But it really
Doesn't come easily against Kiwi opposition.
And they just you're exactly right, and they didn't really deserve it. I don't know. They've got the Blues in Auckland on Friday, so I can't see things getting better. But yeah, look, hopefully either Nella or O'Connor are back in the finals campaign.
Look, old Reds would have got their arse handed to them over the last 3 weeks, so good on them for staying dogged in the fight. As well, Jock Campbell and Jordan Petaia, even though they were back, they're only coming back from injury. So, and same with Suli Vunivalu, things like that. So, I mean, it's been hard on them. And then
effort was good, but boys.
Oh yeah,
oh,
I
100%.
reckon the
That's
effort-
one
effort's
thing you
great.
can't discount is.
and you can
Reds teams
yeah.
over the past decade or
Yeah.
before this sort of
and you
turnaround
can't deny
would
the without that effort, that score blows out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because they did play, they weren't up to the Red standard that we're used to, and that's something that Thorny's just driven into the boys for the last 4 years.
Do you think the boys had a plan B? What I saw was a team that probably should have been up with their chances up another 10 to 15 points in that middle period of the game. And then when it started turning against them, yeah, the effort was good, but there just wasn't enough nous.
I agree,
enough
Gorka,
smarts.
and I think when they don't get the go forward that Nella provides through his carries, or O'Connor putting someone through a little half gap, Tate's not getting that speed of ball at the breakdown. And then you're right, they didn't look like they had a plan B. They looked disorganized, which is the word that me and Dal used after the game. And maybe that's something that Jimmy Mackay brings into the team this week. It's like, all right, guys, when we're not going anywhere, let's have a structure that we can fall back on to bring that momentum back.
It's there's probably these guys that have stepped in, the Hunters and guys in Taniela that are all out. There's guys that are coming in, again, that probably haven't played a lot of games or had a little bit of time off the bench. So it's probably not that polished, when you get into those tough spots, they're probably, guys aren't used to being in those spots. So, and look, I think we talk about the effort and how good the effort was. I think that's due to guys going, sweet, I'm getting a run. This is, wanting to take opportunities and chances, and sometimes you almost chance your arm too much.
Yeah, because you are still short of a run.
And then you're thinking, when are these guys coming back? I've got to go. I've got to do what I need to do to cement a spot. And look, I think, it is a tough loss, but at the same time, we've got to remember that this Reds group's been together for a long time as well, in my perspective, so these guys that are stepping into these positions off injuries and that, they need to be ready to go.
Yeah.
It can't be okay, we've got a plan B now. Like, this group's been together, and I know there's a few, and we should touch on Big Albione and Seth.
Yeah.
Good to see them back in
Bloody oath.
in the team. I know that probably be a bit of an interruption, but with this young squad and contracting what Thorny's been through, you create a tight culture where you should have 1, 2, and 3 ready to go, because if 1 and 2 are out, 3's ready to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
In my opinion, in good teams, in good Super Rugby teams, as we see with the Kiwis, someone's next in.
They take their chances
It's
and
as if
they're
that
up to
person's
speed.
there all the time.
Yeah.
I think one thing is that at least the mentality has changed. Old Reds probably would have been like, it was a good effort, but we did lose. Whereas they're filthy with themselves, which is really good to see. They're setting standards, very high standards.
Sorry, Jable, before we
looking to
move
hit
on, Quirky mentioned Seth Fagasi. Dal, he had an interesting trip to Suncorp on Friday night. Because the last I heard, I had no idea. The last I heard, he was contracted at the Melbourne Rebels.
He was playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
And then, so can you just run us through what his sort of last week looked like?
So he was contracted on an EDS contract down there, and so obviously coming back, the Reds had some injury cover. He was able to come back and play for the Reds, but he drove up on, I think it was Tuesday afternoon or Wednesday. It was coming up as 24th man, 25th man, basically.
Drove from Melbourne.
Probably in a Tarago as
Are
well.
we doing it that tough at the moment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, he just said like he could have
Did Reds Rugby get the petrol bill or what?
he could have flown
That
up,
was about $900.
but he wanted to be up here. He wanted to have his car, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, he got up here on Thursday. He was still 25th man. Harry Hoopert fell sick on the Friday. Obviously, big virus. He fell sick, couldn't play. Seth all of a sudden hasn't done a session with the team. Goes straight into number 17, and then all of a sudden he's playing rugby for them on the Friday night.
Loose.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
He's had an incredible.
He's
we
had an
need-
incredible
We need to get
journey.
him on the show.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, man.
Tell us
Yeah.
about it.
From Logan Rugby, mate. Grew
Yeah.
up just down the road from him. Bloody oath. Taught him everything he knows. Definitely not. But Dow, 38-28. Brumbies over the Chiefs. Brumbies now 3 on the trot.
Why
Are they gonna win
aren't we talking about it more? So what I don't understand is you go to the UK and you watch these games and it's like a 9-6 game. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's the greatest game of all time. The media talks it up and it's this beautiful thing and all that kind of stuff. The Brumbies have now beaten 3 New Zealand teams in 3 weeks and are looking almost, I'm not going to say unbeatable, but they look fantastic.
They look great. Yeah.
Like they everything they're doing is just like, and I think they're, like Gorko said earlier, they've primed these younger boys to come through now, and they're feeling confident. So they get on the field, and they're actually doing a job. And so why aren't we talking about it more? Why aren't we building them up more and saying, well, hold on, do you know what I mean? They're a real shot at winning the competition.
100%.
Like they're massive. Like it's Valentini, it's Lolesio, it's all these Nick White. Like
He was unreal.
yeah, that's exactly right. I'm like
Unreal.
Gorko. Like he's a massive competitor, but not necessarily someone I always enjoy watching. But he is brilliant.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? Like there's these guys that are just stepping up and doing a wonderful job and putting this team in a position where, the Blues and the Crusaders aren't unbeatable anymore.
No.
And this is the exciting thing. Like it's just incredible to see where they're coming. And Dan McKellar's obviously a genius. He's well supported by some really good coaches, but he's got them primed. We've got 3 weeks to go. And then all of a sudden it's 3 finals games. And we could see the Reds versus the Brumbies in round 1 of the finals.
That'd be loose.
Dossie, you were obviously there, mate. For me as a back row, when I watch the Brums, mate, defence wins games. I'm a huge advocate for that. And watching them on the weekend, mate, the Chiefs just were banging and going nowhere. And that's pretty, that you don't really see that a lot with New Zealand teams against Aussie teams. Was defence just driven, like as part of the DNA culture at the Brums? Because I always hated playing the Brums, knew that it was just like you're going to be running in a wall.
Yeah, I mean, and we talked about it with the Reds, that effort factor. That's something that they drive home down at the Brumbies. Dale touched on it before. Dan McKellar, his coaching, I think bringing Laurie Fisher in the Lord for the last few years has really upped their breakdown pressure and their defensive shape. Mate, they've got a good defensive. They've got a good defensive coach down there, and just their cattle. They've got class everywhere. In the front row, you got Slips. Having the
Scott Co's been in
He's
career best
unreal.
form, dude.
having the
really
luxury of bringing
Mate.
Ala Latoa off the bench with Nick Frost, who I think was good. Just their 23-man squad. Man, they'll give this title a red hot crack, I think.
I loved you love the back row. I didn't do much tackling. I was all attack.
Just straight flag,
No, it
Gorko.
was the running sideways, going, run through that hole, then run behind them.
Yeah. But those back rows just running off the back fence. Like they were almost overrunning the ball. Nick White had to actually get it to they were running so hard at the defence. And that, mate, Rob Valentini has been awesome. They've all been awesome. And, it's a pleasure to watch.
I think, I talked about it a few weeks ago, and Quirky will be familiar with it. Remember Quirky in 2011, we played the Hurricanes, and whenever we played Kiwi teams, you and Mackenzie had this philosophy around playing vertical through them, because we knew that their skill sets, the way that they spread the ball, like their fitness levels would possibly be a bit better than what ours were. But there's one way, the one thing that you can't teach is that, intent and that physicality going forward and going through them. And, and we're seeing guys like Jerome Brown, Bobby Valentini, Scotty Co rolling up their sleeves, coming off that back fence, really making inroads up in and around the ruck. And that's what's creating the space for Nick White. Back then we had Willie Genia creating the space for Willie Genia. So the recipe's there. And I think the way that they're playing the game is perfect against Kiwi opposition.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. What is it? You got to go through them to go around them. Do you know, since you mentioned that vertical thing the other week, and I was talking to someone on the weekend, and I was mentioning it, they're like, man, that's really, really good insight. I was like, yeah, you can see here they're doing the old vertical. And they're like, oh, what's that? I'm like, oh, yeah. And they're like, oh, that's great. I'm like, thanks, bro.
Gorko's always lived horizontal.
Yeah. People got to hit gaps. Why aren't they hitting more gaps? Boys, quick question. If we're picking the Australian team today, who gets it, Nick White or our man?
Jeez, that's a really good question.
It's the hard thing, because do you remember, was it last year or the year before when Alan Alaalatoa was in, like, ridiculous form, and he's got that leadership potential, and Nella was, like, just becoming what he was, and I think Alaalatoa got all the starts, but then, you know, they were arguing, oh, Nella's impact in that final 30 is so great, we can play it there. By the end, he was starting because they were like, we need him on. It's the same with this. You've got Nick White sort of runs the show, really great general, and Tate's got that spark. Does the final 30 or 20 from Tate outweigh sort of that first 50 or 60? Or do you need him on for as long as humanly possible?
Or Nick White finishes
the game.
Because we get all out of shape in that last 30.
Yeah,
give him the last 30 minutes.
It might come down to just how Renz wants to play
I
the
think
test
so.
matches.
Yeah.
If Whitey's a structured guy,
Yeah.
you know, against the Kiwi team, you want to play that structure. And as you guys are saying, Tate's a flair man, and
maybe against the
Kiwi
French,
times,
or
French,
against the French,
the South Africans, you want to play that sort of a bit awkward rugby where, you know, Tate's just going the line, offloading, stepping, going.
Against the big bodies of South Africa,
Yeah.
you might want to try and actually
I think
dart
it's
as
going to
much.
come down to literally the way they want to play the game.
That
and
week.
who they pick.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the fact we've got this competition is the best. In 2011, when the Reds won that comp, it was something like, was it 38 or 41 odd players had been used throughout the season by Ewan McKenzie, which is just insane. And he would pick based on the opposition because they had the depth. So as long as we've got the depth, it's going to be pretty bloody good. Alrighty, now, speaking of the international game, we're going to have a little bit of a battler's yarn. Unfortunately, Big Fat Das is away with the spicy cough, so he won't be running it. But he wanted us to run through a couple of things. I don't know if you guys saw on the weekend. There was a penalty shootout in the Champions Cup quarterfinal between, I think, Toulouse and someone else.
Munster.
I can't remember. Oh, it's written right here. Munster. And we wanted to ask, in that situation, so after 100 minutes, the scores can't be broken up. They went to a kicking competition, and we wanted to see if you guys had any ideas in regards to what we could do to potentially break the deadlock. I think Das had a few ideas he wanted to show. So one of them was, what have we got here, Zachy? So this is an Italian sport called Calcio Storico or something like that, where there's about 50 guys all beating the shit out of each other, throwing flares and then pass the ball and try time. So that's one. Another one's jelly wrestling. I mean, at the end of the game, as if you wouldn't want to see Scotty Seo and Taniela Tupou and their budgies going at it like that. Good. So that could be an option there, just jelly wrestle at the end. And then maybe it's a slapping contest. You just pick a player from each side and see you later, son. So I don't see that. No bingo after that one. So there were some of the suggestions that you could potentially see after a drawn game at the end of it. Quirky, you got any ideas you might want to see? An egg and spoon race, maybe?
Mate, I like we'd have King of the Ring, maybe. Just you choose a Whitey and a Tate McDermott and get their foot in a big truck tyre and go for it, maybe. Look, yeah, I when was the last time penalty shootouts been? You know, I haven't seen that in however long.
I think it would have been about 10 or so years ago.
Yeah,
it doesn't happen very often, but it was pretty suspenseful. It was Antoine Dupont as well who kicked that final one. So they have 3 players. 2 players kick from the 22, right in front from the 22 and the 10-metre line. The other 2 kick from either side on the 15s, and the other 2 sort of go further out, and they go chronologically. So you've got Dupont, Romain Entamac and stuff like that just shooting the lights out. But it was pretty loose.
Maybe a nudie run. from end to end.
Or it's just whoever's got the biggest piece.
I don't understand why they don't just have a drop-off system. Do you know what I mean?
Like drop-off touch.
Yeah.
Like drop-off touch. Mind you, I don't mind the penalty, the shootout. I did win the Nudgee Under 16 goal kicking championship. It's very much the same format.
Yeah, but that was with a leather ball back in the 60s, so it's
And
a
I
different
was
game
toe
now.
poking.
Another thing we wanted to discuss, I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen, Sione's brother Isaac's getting married over in Hawaii at the moment, so a few of the boys, Friends and Co, are all over there on tour. Gorko, you've had, I guess I could say, the pleasure of spending a lot of the time on the road touring. Have you got any particular stories, any tour tales you'd want to regale us with?
Yeah, a lot probably shouldn't be discussed on this. I was saying, it was quite professional. But look, I was very lucky that early days I toured with the Australian Sevens side, and it was probably a lot looser than it was then. We had some fantastic characters on that, and not so fantastic characters. Campo didn't mean to say that. So we had a lot of good times. But I was lucky enough at the end of my sort of career, and as I got sort of into my mid-30s, that I remember being on a holiday with my girlfriend at the time, who knew nothing about rugby. I think I was about 34, and someone had pulled out of the classic Wallabies going to Bermuda. And so somebody called me and said, "You've got 2 days, you've got a passport, do you want to come?" And I said to my girlfriend, we were in North Queensland on this beautiful holiday. I said, "I've just been picked for Australia, I've got to go." So she's gone, okay, and she thinks it's way more important than it is. And, look, Bermuda for me was my favourite place. I toured there 7 out of the next 8 years, and for I guess reasons, it's a pretty safe island, but the only way you can get around is on scooters. So you can imagine. So about year 5, I decided that I got away with 5 years of scooters, and I went, I'm going to catch taxis from now on in. It's expensive, but I'm going to do it. And we went on tour with a couple of leagueies, and you can imagine how.
There's your first mistake.
Yeah,
Recipe.
Yeah, one of them might be at my pub this weekend. But, anyway, we had a pretty big night, and I won't mention names, but the next morning, the only thing you had to do on this particular tour was one training session and play the games. Like, it was very, very loose, but there's this one training session. Let's say the tour started and you had two nights in New York before Bermuda, but mind you. Anyway, so I said to this bloke, and let's call him Steve for the sake of the story. Steve, you got to wake up. And anyway, Steve was driving to training, and everyone's on a scooter, and I was in my cab, and I got to training and said, "Where's Steve?" And I put him on the bike, and anyway, Steve had fallen asleep as everyone was going around the corner on his scooter and went straight through, didn't kill himself, rocked up to training with his whole face off, but continued to train. And we found out later that night after a few beers that maybe there was a bit of a still knocks party in the league the night before.
What still knocks?
Anyway, look, that's just a little thing, but no, I did it too. We did we did one when I was about 21, and it was New York Sevens, and then we flew via Miami down to Trinidad Tobago for the Trinidad Tobago Sevens. And
were these IRBs?
no, that wasn't an IRB one. This one was it was called the Aussie Legends, where
need to
young
bring it
blokes
back.
would go
Yeah, sorry.
Bring it back.
Sorry, the Australian Wallabies tour.
So basically, some old ex-Wallabies would take these up-and-coming blokes, and we go on these tours. And we'd been on the booze for 9 days, and we got there, and we thought, oh, how good's this, a night off the booze? Like, we've been going pretty hard for 9 days, including, I think there was a 7-hour court session in there too, on one night. Anyway, we got down there, and we thought, how good. Just relax. And we got to this airport, Trinidad and Tobago. It looked like the Proserpine Airport, if anyone's gone there. And we thought, what the hell's going on here? And the boys, all the Trinidad and Tobago team, had come out to meet us. And we go, okay. And we chucked our bags in the back of someone's ute. We thought, we're never seeing those again. And anyway, they went, yeah, come over here. The cars are over here. They popped the boot. And there were just eskies lined up in about 3 car boots. We stayed in the International Airport car park for 5 hours, just drinking booze. And you can imagine Trinidad and Tobago, there was something else involved too. So, yeah, I've been very lucky to tour some pretty good places. There probably are looser stories, but yeah, no, I had a ball.
There wasn't much footy play from the sounds today.
Oh, no, we won both tournaments.
I feel like you need to give old Kevin Foote from the Rebels a call this week and just let him know what the recipe was. Get the Rebels boys
Here's
back
a
on
bit
track.
of culture.
Yeah.
Sniff this. Before we get into the Shoot Shield recap, because Manly came away with a huge win over Eastwood, I just wanted to have a look at some of the action from the weekend. So the Eastwood number 6, Tuasui, scored an absolute perler of a try in the corner here. Check this out. You can see it here. He's down here on this near side. How's this for a finish? Watch this.
And they move it out right. Ratu Tuasesi with it again in a bit of space. Tries to get around Kamisala. He does so. Ratu for the corner.
How's that?
Unbelievable.
That's
5 points
Radicki-esque.
there for
That is
Eastwood.
Radicki-esque, and that is one hell of a finish from Eastwood. And then in the same game as well, the winger, Dolores, the guy who you'd think would actually be a hell of a finisher, pulled up probably one of the best finishes I've ever seen in club rugby. Check this out.
Playing advantage once again. This could be strife for the Marlins. And now
Check
they
this
cut
out.
one
How's this for a
Dolores.
finish?
He will score.
Nailed it.
And they lost by 2, didn't they?
The ref still awarded it.
Oh, no.
We're gonna need
He must have lost his money at the hairdresser too.
23-year-old for Eastwood.
How's he awarded that?
I don't know, mate. And you see just the reaction, the head in the hands. He knew straight away. The ref's like, and you can hear the ref on the mic. He's like, no, he got it down. Everyone's like, and he's going,
As these boys know, Japanese referee.
Yeah.
Probably Japanese referee.
The ref might have been the one who cut his hair. So
Yeah,
he's just,
literally.
It was just repaying the favour. But as I said, in Shoot Shield, round 6, huge upsets. But first and foremost, Manly 34-32 over Eastwood, the 2 top teams in the competition. But, I mean, that's one aspect of it. But we'll rifle through the other scores just to give you an idea as to how that competition's shaping up. The BCs went down 32-31 at home to Warringah. The Hunter Wildfires went down to Randwick and beat them 41-38. Gordon Dispatch 24-14 over West Harbour. 2 Blues, 3 on the trot, 28-25 over Southern Districts, and Norton Uni 17-12 in favour of the students. That right there is the sign of a healthy competition, Dow.
Have you ever seen a closer competition down there? I don't think I ever
Not
have.
down in the Shoot Shield, no.
Like, every team there is vying for a final spot, and that's the most exciting part, right? We're going to see some quality teams this year miss out on a top 6 spot. It's incredible.
2 Blues getting a win over Southern Districts, and because it's now their 3rd in a row, we don't even really give a shit. Because Hunter Wildfires dispatching the Wicks at home. That's just ridiculous. And I think this harks back to...
Did anyone tackle in that game? 41-38?
Doesn't really matter, mate. Defense doesn't win matches, obviously, Quirky.
No, I'm with you.
But no, I mean... was it last week talking to Jed, and he was saying that DC is really, really strengthening that and sort of bridging that divide between New South Wales Rugby Union and the Shoot Shield, and you can't help but think that this has got to be a direct correlation with it. as we said, guys like Tavita Funa playing for the Two Blues, Ruan playing for the Hunter last weekend. You've got so many Super Rugby players genuinely playing week in, week out in club footy. That's absolutely awesome to see.
Yeah, it's what should be happening, right? It's
100%.
exactly what should be happening. So it happened back in the day, and the competition was so strong. And we're going to notice it, I reckon, up here as well. So at the moment, I believe there's 6 teams who are good enough to make the Hospital Cup top 4. And then you're going to bring all these Reds back, and I think we're going to have a competition that's just going to be turned on its ear.
Who are the 6 teams?
Everyone but Sunnybank and Norse.
Brothers.
Mate, I reckon. We wish. But, mate, the number of players they're getting back from the Reds is
scary,
ridiculous.
right?
Scary, very scary.
But,
all Wallabies. All Wallabies.
But I mean, well, let's have a yarn about that then. So, Hospital Cup round 3, South's 10 down to UQ 19. One thing I think Souths are going to be absolutely red hot this year. They've got guys like Bernie Nickel and stuff joining the fray. Sam Mataafa. They're a bloody good sign. Jakey Milne was playing again on the weekend, so they're going to cause some upsets. Brothers 35-7 over Norths. That was to be expected. The Doggies 43-34 over the Tigers. It's right, Dos, man.
Yeah.
Don't cry, bitch. But then
With
Jeeks.
13 men too, Cable.
Dogs, mate.
Yeah.
Up the
The
dogs.
Dogs had 30 men.
Yeah.
Come on, Benny Moan.
Come on, man. Get it together. Up the dogs.
They need Quirky back. That's why you're back in town, isn't it?
Yeah, I am. I'm going to sleep here tonight and go to training tomorrow.
But the big one, Bond 23, Jeeps 14. I mean, Jeeps have been absolutely insane the first couple of weeks. So clinical. But Bond, mate, they ran them ragged, Dal.
Yeah, they didn't. I think they nullified their threats really well.
Mhm.
Obviously, you didn't see a lot of Pat Nicholson and Josh Collins on the weekend, but up front, they just absolutely belted them. Do you know what I mean? Bond were just sensational when it came to the ruck, and you know what I mean, and all of the set piece when it came to it. But Hayden Sargent and a few other boys really stepped up.
He was immense.
Is
And
he
the
a
big-
Bond?
Yeah, he was
At
perfect
10.
off the boot. Nailed a conversion from the sideline after just to ice it. But the thing is about Bond is that they're in a position now because they've got players that are coming through their Colts system into their seniors. Guys like Tonga Blake, Spenny Denham, they're now in a position that you've sort of seen the stronger clubs like UQ, Jeeps, Brothers in particular. The reason they've been so strong is they've got the older heads that are there, guys like Dan Boardman and stuff. But then you can start bringing in your juniors or your younger players into that fold and replace players like they lose Ryan Menzies and they, get guys like Tarsi came in. He's obviously not there this year. They lose Mitch Third. They've got Hayden Sargent. Liam Dillon was out for a bit last year. Spenny Denham was stepping up. They've got what you were talking about, Quirky. They've got like for like, and players are coming into that fold knowing their system and absolutely flourishing.
It's also the first time they've ever been able to keep a group together. So they
Yeah.
got Joey, they got Dan Boardman, they got some key guys that they're keeping together year after year. This is the 3rd year in a row now that they've kept this team together. Obviously, you've got guys coming in and out, but that's what they've done really well. Do you know what I mean? I believe with Grant Anderson and those guys down there, they've kept together the core group of players.
They play the best brand of footy in club rugby in Queensland. They do.
You think if you keep a group in this competition together for 3 years, you're going to have almost an advantage. I mean, the UQs, the Brothers of the world, are they get those players constantly coming through, but you see a few of the last premierships, the Jeeps and that. When they've stuck together and they've given up going overseas or doing that sort of stuff, that they come on and it looks really good. They look tight.
They're almost creating a bit of a culture down there too. The Gold Coast has almost been a tough place to travel. A lot of guys from Brizzy have played down there, so driving back and forth. So there hasn't really, but I've got a couple of mates playing down there over the last few years, and they said it's actually a really cool culture. They're all getting on the gas after games. They're all going to
Just
dinner
not
together.
at the clubhouse.
Just not at the clubhouse. Student, it's all around. But
it's crazy, man.
I think that's what they're creating really well. Is they're starting to build their brand, their culture. They're getting some guys from the Reds down there now, and they're a bit of a brand that teams like East and Brothers and Jeeps have had a long history of real good cultures and that. So I think they're well on their way.
Bloody oath.
I
How
think-
good's Nix and Taramai, by the way? Anyone? I love him so much.
Have they got a couple of? Have they got a
The
couple?
number 8
Yeah.
deletes blokes.
Have they got a couple of DJs in that team? I've always found the Gold Coast team very hard to beat. A couple of DJs, bring them together. They've got a few free passes to a couple of the clubs.
Yeah. So their second rowers, the security guard at Melbourne's,
Exactly.
stuff like that. Oh yeah, they're well entrenched in the Gold Coast community. I'll tell you that much. All right, well that rounds out all the action from the weekend. Rugby of the round for last weekend, Dos.
Oh man, I think Dale touched on it before earlier. It has to be Nick White. I think the way he controlled the game and he put the Brumbies in the right parts of the field. He picked the Chiefs' defensive parts at the right time. Yeah, and I think that competition between him and Lonergan has been healthy for Whitey. It's really, now that we're coming into the important part at the back end of the season, potentially it was very 50-50 there in terms of who McKellar goes with. And Whitey's just shown on the weekend that, he's going to be the guy that leads the Brumbies deep into this competition.
Dow, your rugby of the round.
Isaiah Parisi. I feel like
Yes.
he's really putting his hand up for that Wallabies 13 jersey. He's had a few mistakes in him over the years, but, we've all watched him since he was 17, 18 years of age, and he's really stepped up over the last couple of weeks, and on the weekend he was just immense.
And you just take those mistakes with
Absolutely.
what he's going to give you week in, week out. That 13 from Moana is pretty good too.
Yeah. Is he a grammar boy?
He is
Levi Armour.
Levi Armour, he was immense.
Yeah.
Absolutely outstanding.
Yeah,
It's a
he's
good
starting to find form. He was a bit of a journeyman, played at Tasman Marcos, all that sort of stuff, but he's been given an opportunity. He's been absolutely killing it. Quirky, your rugby of the round.
Mate, actually, he's not a player, mate. Tony Brown for me, obviously. He coached me there at the Sunwolves, mate. He's an absolute wizard. He's one of the best coaches I've ever had, mate. Just the mind on the man. I know that the Landers have been, mate, there and thereabouts every single game, like 2-point losses, 1-point losses, and I know how much work he puts in, and mate, he's a good man for culture and good man for beers, and I know that he absolutely would have deleted beers after the win against the Reds, and mate, I think he really deserved it. So he's not a good-looking man, but he's me rugby crush, big brownie, just to finally come over that hump of getting a win.
Gorko, your rugby.
Right, not sure of his first name, but it's against was against my old club. The young hooker for East, young Brennan, 4 tries on debut.
Rugged A.
How good's that? Huh?
Is that for the Tigers?
Yeah.
Really?
Yep, at hooker. Trust me, he didn't run more than a metre for any of them.
Not if you ask him.
It's 4 tries. So how good's that?
Did young Zach not play?
Starting to mustn't it?
Yeah.
No, because that's the thing. Zach Crothers has been absolutely
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah.
He is a gun. So, yeah, 4 tries on
That's
debut.
that's a lot of cock and balls after there at the end.
Yeah, Jesus.
Whiz.
That's oh god.
Sorry, that's a little dive into the Tigers culture you guys probably wouldn't know about.
Don't know if I want to know about it, to be
Trust
honest.
me, you do. You want to wrap your lips around 4 of them. Trust me.
I just see 43-34 and I don't care.
Yeah. Sorry, I got Damie glasses on.
My rugby, you can't go, it's hard to go past all the sides that got those big wins, the 2 Blues, the Wildfires, Manly coming away with it. But Christian Yasmin, as I said, in that performance on the weekend, jagging 3 tries in a losing side, mate, I don't know. He has Sevens potential written all over him. He's like catching smoke, that bloke, and he's just got toe. But then again, you got guys all in that shoot shield competition that are getting a Guernsey going up, and they're all taking it. So when you got players of that caliber not being able to get a sniff, that's pretty bloody good. Well, that rounds out this episode, but I think we've got some footage. Dos,
Yeah,
you wanted to have brought up. I don't even know what this is going to be. It's not the cock and balls or whatever it is it?
Unfortunately, I couldn't get any footage going way back of Quirky doing his down at the Tiger,
Yes,
down at
please.
Tigerhead. But I thought since we had the privilege of having Gorko on the show tonight, it would be a shame if we didn't share this, and maybe, as I said, Kevin Foote might be able to use this down at the for the Rebels this weekend. But this was his pre-match speech. We were fortunate enough to play in the fundraiser game, the Reds 15 against the Tongan charity 15, and Gorka obviously didn't do a good enough job because Tonga ended up winning. But this
late replacement.
this has to be one of the all-time speeches.
These games are pretty important, right? And it's days like this I look around at my teammates and I think, who's on my fucking team And who's on their fucking team? Dan Leo. Who gives a fuck? This cunt won a super fucking trophy. He was a fucking captain. Hey, Trevor Leota. This cunt fucking played the most games for the fucking Reds. Shane Crowe, look at Barry Barnes, still looking fucking good. Okay, they're going to come out there. They're not feeling that good, so they're going to pump themselves up with a war dance. Okay, boys? A fucking war dance. Just know that every single one of you has a war dance inside. Okay? Right in here. It's what Bundy rum fucking takes. Why counterfeits sound the way they do. It's why Jeff Horn went out here and became a world champion. It's called the Queensland fucking spirit. And it's in every fucking one of you. Okay? This is a charity relief game. There is no charity and there is no fucking relief.
Mate, how many times have you stood at the doors at the port office to everyone lined up and gave them that speech before they entered in?
And he's rock hard while doing it.
Yeah, literally. Every boys get ready to get.
Nick Frisbee's bunch party.
Brilliant.
Pickle's probably the last one that needs a rev up in that situation, to be honest.
No, Gorko kicked us all out because we were absolutely cooked. Everyone was blind. And Frizz and his 5 cousins set this scrum. There must have been 7 or 8 of them set this scrum. They've turned around and started to scrummage back through the door at the port office.
Mate, I was there and I was on the piss. There was something going on up the road.
He was in the scrum, mate. Gorko was in the scrum trying to get back in. His own security kicked him out.
I had this manager and Frizz's brother's nude on the table. My manager comes over to me and he goes, "What do I do?" And I go, "Kick the fuck out." I said, I'm pretty loose, but I'm not that loose. Anyway, they went outside and he's standing at the top like going, no, you can't come back in. And then I've got the footage. They've set up this mall and they've just gone straight over the top of me, straight back in. And I went, well, they're fucking coming in now.
You paid that workers' compo for him or what?
Oh, well, you'll have to get us that footage for next week's episode, Gork, because that'll be absolutely red hot. But that rounds out this week's episode of the PAC Show. Very big thank you, Dos, Dallin, and of course, Quirky and Gorko coming up and sitting on the battlers bench for us. It was absolutely awesome. Zachy boy, again, thank you very much for all your efforts. On behalf of everybody here at the PIG Athletic Club and DoubleTake Studios, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.